The clock on the wall showed 11:47 p.m. when Denise Williams pushed her cleaning cart down the empty hallway of Preston University's mathematics department. What she didn't know was that behind the door of classroom 401, 5 of the world's most brilliant mathematicians were having a complete breakdown. Professor James Bennett sat with his head in his hands, staring at a whiteboard covered in equations that looked like ancient hieroglyphs to most people. His colleagues had been there for 14 hours straight, and they were no closer to solving the problem that had haunted them for 3 months. "This is impossible," Dr. Sarah Mills whispered, throwing her marker onto the desk. "We've tried every approach known to mathematics. The Caldwell equation is going to destroy us." The Caldwell equation wasn't just any math problem. It was the holy grail of number theory, a puzzle that had stumped every mathematician who dared to tackle it since it appeared in a research paper 6 months ago. Universities around the world had formed teams to solve it. The first institution to crack it would receive a $10 million research grant and international recognition. More importantly for Preston University, failure to make progress would mean losing their entire mathematics department funding. James rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the equation again. The numbers and symbols seemed to mock him from the board. At 32, he was considered a prodigy in his field, with a PhD from Harvard and papers published in the most prestigious journals. But this problem made him feel like a first-year student all over again. "Maybe we should call it a night," suggested Dr. Robert Chen, the eldest member of their team. "Fresh minds tomorrow might help." "Tomorrow is the deadline for our progress report," James replied grimly. "If we don't have something concrete to show the university board, they'll pull our funding and give the money to the engineering department." The weight of responsibility pressed down on all of them. The mathematics department employed 30 people, including graduate students whose futures depended on this research continuing. Families would be affected. Dreams would be crushed. All because of one seemingly impossible equation. As the professors gathered their papers and prepared to leave, none of them noticed the quiet woman in the blue uniform who had been mopping the floors outside their classroom. Denise had heard every word through the thin walls. She understood more than they could imagine. Denise Williams was 28 years old and had been cleaning the university buildings for 3 years. Every night, she walked these halls alone, emptying trash cans and wiping down surfaces while the academic world slept. Most people barely noticed her existence. Students and professors looked right through her as if she were part of the furniture. But Denise had a secret that would shock everyone who knew her. While she cleaned, she listened. While she worked, she learned. And while others slept, she solved problems that most people couldn't even understand. Growing up in the poorest neighborhood of the city, Denise had always been different. While other kids played games, she found patterns in everything around her. She could predict which traffic light would change next, calculate the exact amount of change before cashiers finished counting, and solve puzzles that left adults scratching their heads. Her teachers in elementary school noticed her gift early. "This girl has an extraordinary mind," her third-grade teacher had told her mother. "She should be in advanced programs, maybe even skip grades." But life had other plans. Denise's mother worked 3 jobs to keep their small apartment, and there was no money for special programs or tutoring. When Denise's father left when she was 12, taking what little stability they had, mathematics became her escape from reality. She taught herself advanced concepts using library books, solving calculus problems while her classmates struggled with basic algebra. By high school, she was secretly working through university-level mathematics textbooks. But without proper guidance or opportunities, her talents remained hidden. After graduating high school with perfect grades that no one seemed to notice, Denise took the cleaning job at Preston University. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave her something precious, access to one of the best mathematics departments in the country. Every night, as she cleaned classrooms and offices, Denise absorbed knowledge like a sponge. She memorized equations left on whiteboards, read through papers left on desks, and listened to lectures through classroom doors. The professors never knew they had their most dedicated student working invisibly around them. As James and his team finally left classroom 401 that night, Denise entered to begin her cleaning routine. The room smelled of coffee and desperation. Empty pizza boxes and crumpled papers littered every surface. The whiteboard was covered in layer upon layer of equations, arrows, and crossed-out attempts. Denise began her work methodically, emptying trash cans and wiping down desks. But her eyes kept returning to the whiteboard. The Caldwell equation stared back at her, surrounded by the failed attempts of brilliant minds. She had been following their progress for weeks, watching through windows as they struggled with approaches that seemed logical but led nowhere. She had seen their frustration grow and their hope fade. What they didn't realize was that they were thinking too complexly about something beautifully simple. As Denise cleaned the erasers, she found herself standing directly in front of the equation. Her mind began to work automatically, seeing patterns that others had missed. The solution wasn't hidden in complex theorems or advanced techniques. It was right there, elegant and obvious, like a melody that had been playing all along. Without thinking, Denise picked up a piece of chalk. Her hand moved across a small corner of the board, writing numbers and symbols with the confidence of someone who had seen this pattern 1,000 times before. The equation unfolded before her like a flower blooming, each step leading naturally to the next. In less than 5 minutes, she had written what the world's best mathematicians couldn't find in 3 months. The complete, correct solution to the Caldwell equation sat quietly in the corner of the board, waiting to change everything. Denise stepped back and looked at what she had written. Her heart pounded as she realized what she had just done. This wasn't just any problem she had solved. This was the problem that could make or break careers, that could change the future of mathematics research. She looked around the empty classroom, suddenly afraid. What would happen if someone found her solution? Would they believe that a cleaning woman had succeeded where professors had failed? Would they think she had cheated somehow? But as she prepared to erase her work, Denise thought about Dr. Bennett's worried face, about the graduate students who might lose their funding, about the families who depended on this department. Her solution could save all of them. She left the chalk dust on her fingers and quietly finished cleaning the room. Tomorrow morning would bring answers to questions that had haunted the mathematics world. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Denise wondered if her life was about to change forever. The impossible had become possible with a piece of chalk and a brilliant mind that nobody knew existed. Dr. James Bennett arrived at the university at 6:30 a.m., 2 hours earlier than usual. He had barely slept, his mind churning over the Caldwell equation like a broken record. Today was the day he would have to face the university board and explain why the mathematics department deserved to keep its funding despite making zero progress on the most important problem of their careers. He walked through the empty hallways with heavy steps, his coffee growing cold in his hand. The morning light streaming through the windows felt harsh and unforgiving. In a few hours, this building might no longer be his academic home. James pushed open the door to classroom 401 and stopped dead in his tracks. There, in the bottom right corner of the whiteboard, written in simple chalk, was something that made his heart skip a beat. Numbers and symbols arranged in a sequence that looked almost too elegant to be real. His eyes traced the work from beginning to end, and with each line, his pulse quickened. "No way," he whispered to himself, dropping his coffee cup. The sound of ceramic shattering on the floor echoed through the empty room, but James didn't notice. He was completely absorbed in what he was seeing. The solution was beautiful in its simplicity. Whoever had written it had taken an approach that none of them had considered, treating the equation not as a complex theorem requiring advanced techniques, but as a pattern recognition problem. The mathematical reasoning was flawless, each step building naturally on the previous one. James pulled out his phone and started taking pictures of the board, his hands shaking with excitement. Then he began checking the work manually, plugging numbers into his calculator and running through the logic step by step. Everything held up perfectly. "This is impossible," he said aloud, but the evidence was right in front of him. Someone had solved the Caldwell equation, and they had done it with an approach so simple that it was genius. His phone buzzed with an incoming call from Dr. Mills. "James, please tell me you have good news for the board meeting," she said without saying hello. "Sarah, you need to get down to classroom 401 right now. Bring Robert and the others. You're not going to believe this." "What's wrong? You sound strange." "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. Just get here now." Within 20 minutes, the entire mathematics team was crowded around the whiteboard, staring at the solution in stunned silence. Dr. Mills was the first to speak. "Who wrote this?" "That's what we need to find out," James replied. "But first, let's make sure it's correct." For the next hour, they worked together to verify every aspect of the solution. They ran it through computer programs, checked it against known mathematical principles, and tested it with different variables. No matter how they approached it, the answer remained solid. "This is revolutionary," Dr. Robert Chen said quietly. "This approach could change how we think about entire categories of problems." "But who could have done this?" Dr. Mills asked. "The building was locked. Security would have records of anyone entering after hours." James was already on his phone with campus security. "This is Professor Bennett from the mathematics department. I need to see the security footage from classroom 401 last night, from about 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. The security guard on duty was confused but helpful. "I can pull that up for you, Professor. Give me a few minutes to access the system." While they waited, the professors stood around the board like detectives at a crime scene. The handwriting was neat but not academic, it lacked the practiced flourishes that came from years of writing complex equations. The chalk work was confident but humble, tucked away in a corner as if the writer hadn't wanted to disturb the existing work on the board. "Whoever did this has an extraordinary mind," James said. "This isn't just mathematical knowledge. This is mathematical intuition at the highest level." The security guard called back within the hour. "Professor Bennett, I've got the footage ready. You can come down to the security office to view it, or I can send someone up with a laptop." "Send someone up, please. This is urgent." 10 minutes later, a young security officer arrived with a laptop containing the previous night's footage. The professors gathered around the small screen as the officer fast-forwarded through hours of empty classroom footage. "There," Dr. Mills pointed at the screen. "Someone's coming in." The timestamp read 12:15 a.m. A figure in a blue cleaning uniform entered the classroom, pushing a cart full of supplies. The person moved efficiently around the room, emptying trash cans and wiping down surfaces. "It's just the cleaning lady," the security officer said. "She comes through every night around this time." But James was watching more carefully. At 12:47 a.m., the cleaning woman approached the whiteboard. She stood there for several minutes, studying the equations. Then, almost casually, she picked up a piece of chalk. "Stop the video," James said urgently. "Go back and play that part again." They watched in amazement as the woman in the blue uniform wrote the complete solution to the Caldwell equation in less than 5 minutes. Her movements were confident and precise, as if she were copying something she had memorized rather than working through a complex problem for the first time. "That's impossible," Dr. Mills breathed. "She's a cleaning lady." "She's a genius," James corrected. "Do we know her name?" The security officer checked his records. "Denise Williams. She's been working here for 3 years. Clean record, never missed a shift, no complaints." James felt something stirring in his chest that he hadn't experienced in years, genuine excitement about a mystery that had nothing to do with equations or theorems. This woman, this Denise Williams, had just solved a problem that had stumped the world's best mathematical minds. And she had done it while mopping floors and emptying trash cans. "We need to find her," he said. "She usually works the night shift," the security officer explained. "Comes in around 10 p.m. and works until 6 a.m. You probably just missed her." James looked at his watch. It was 8:30 a.m. In 6 hours, he would have to face the university board. But now, instead of admitting failure, he would be presenting the solution to the Caldwell equation. And more importantly, he would be introducing them to the most unlikely mathematical genius any of them had ever encountered. "I need her contact information," James said. "We need to talk to her before tonight." As the security officer pulled up Denise's employment records, James found himself wondering about the woman who had changed everything with a piece of chalk. Who was Denise Williams? How had she learned mathematics at this level? And why was she cleaning buildings instead of teaching at universities? The morning sun streamed through the classroom windows, illuminating the solution on the whiteboard like a spotlight on a stage. In a few hours, this equation would make headlines around the world. The mathematics community would be buzzing with excitement and curiosity. But James knew that the real story wasn't the solution itself. It was the brilliant woman who had written it, the hidden genius who had been walking these halls for 3 years without anyone noticing her extraordinary gift. He looked at the address on Denise's employment file and made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. "I'm going to find her," he said. James Bennett drove through the narrow streets of Eastbrook, a neighborhood he had never visited despite living in the same city for 5 years. The contrast between the university district and this area was striking. Where the campus featured manicured lawns and historic brick buildings, Eastbrook showed the wear of economic hardship with its faded storefronts and patched sidewalks. He pulled up to a small apartment complex that had seen better days, checking the address on his phone against the building numbers. Unit 2B. His heart raced with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. How do you approach someone whose life you're about to turn upside down? James climbed the stairs to the second floor and knocked on the door marked 2B. After a long moment, he heard footsteps inside. "Who is it?" came a woman's voice, cautious and tired. "Ms. Williams? My name is James Bennett. I'm a professor at Preston University. I need to speak with you about something very important." There was a long pause. James could hear movement inside the apartment, but the door remained closed. "I don't know any professors," Denise said through the door. "Are you sure you have the right person? You work in the mathematics department, cleaning the classrooms. Last night, you were in room 401. The silence that followed was so complete that James wondered if she had walked away from the door. He was about to knock again when he heard the sound of locks being turned. The door opened just wide enough to reveal a young woman with intelligent brown eyes and natural hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and James could see the wariness in her expression. "What do you want?" Denise asked directly. "I want to talk to you about the equation you solved last night." Denise's face went pale. For a moment, James thought she might close the door in his face. Instead, she stepped back and opened it wider. "You better come in," she said quietly. Denise's apartment was small but immaculately clean. The living room contained a worn sofa, a small television, and something that made James's breath catch, an entire wall covered with bookshelves filled with mathematics textbooks, journals, and papers. Advanced calculus, number theory, topology, abstract algebra, the collection would have been impressive in any graduate student's office. "You have quite a library," James said, trying to keep his voice casual. "I like to read," Denise replied, settling into a chair across from the sofa. "Now what's this about? I haven't done anything wrong." "Wrong? Ms. Williams, you've done something extraordinary. That equation you solved last night, do you understand what it means?" Denise looked down at her hands. "I saw you all working on it for weeks. You seemed frustrated. I thought maybe I could help." "Help?" James leaned forward. "Ms. Williams, Denise, that equation has stumped the best mathematicians in the world for months. Teams at Harvard, MIT, Oxford, Cambridge, everyone has been working on it. And you solved it in 5 minutes while mopping a floor. It wasn't that complicated once you saw the pattern," Denise said quietly. "You were all thinking too hard about it. James stared at her in amazement. Her casual dismissal of a world-class mathematical achievement was both humbling and astounding. "Where did you learn mathematics?" he asked. "Books, mostly. The library when I was younger, then the university bookstore when I started working there. Sometimes I listen to lectures when I'm cleaning nearby classrooms." "But you never took formal classes?" "No degrees." Denise shook her head. "Couldn't afford college. Had to start working right after high school to help my mom pay bills." James felt a weight in his chest as he began to understand the magnitude of wasted potential sitting in front of him. Here was someone with mathematical intuition that most people could only dream of, and she had been invisible to the academic world for years. "Denise, what you did last night, it's going to change everything. The university will want to meet you. The mathematics community will want to know who you are." Fear flickered across her face. "I don't want attention. I just want to do my job and be left alone." "But you could do so much more than clean buildings. With your abilities, you could be teaching, researching, making discoveries that change the world." "Look around, Professor Bennett," Denise said, gesturing to her modest apartment. "This is my world. I don't fit in yours. You solved a problem that I couldn't solve. That Harv. Art professors couldn't solve. You absolutely belong in my world." Denise stood up and walked to her bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines of the textbooks. "You want to know something? I've been solving your homework problems for 3 years. Not just yours, Dr. Mills, Dr. Chen's, all of them. When students leave their assignments in the trash, I take them home and work through them. Most of the time, the students got them wrong." James felt his jaw drop. "You've been doing this for 3 years. It's fun for me. Like doing crossword puzzles. But I never thought anyone would notice." "Well, they're about to notice in a big way. In 2 hours, I'm presenting your solution to the university board. This is going to save our department, Denise. You're going to be famous." The color drained from Denise's face. "You can't tell them it was me." "What? Why not?" "Because I'm nobody. I'm a cleaning lady who didn't even finish college. No one will believe it. They'll think I cheated somehow, or that someone else really solved it." James stood up and walked over to where she stood by the bookshelf. "Denise, look at me. You are not nobody. You are one of the most brilliant mathematicians I've ever encountered. And I've met a lot of them. Brilliant mathematicians have PhDs from fancy schools. They publish papers and give lectures. They don't mop floors for a living. Some of history's greatest mathematical minds were self-taught. Ramanujan, one of the most genius mathematicians who ever lived, had almost no formal training. He was discovered working as a clerk in India. That was different. That was a long time ago. Intelligence doesn't care about degrees or backgrounds, Denise. It just is. And you have it in abundance." Denise turned away from him, staring out the small window that overlooked the street. "What happens if I say yes? If I let you tell them about me? Everything changes. The university will want to offer you opportunities. Scholarships, research positions, a chance to study mathematics formally. You could have the education you deserve. And what happens if they don't believe it? What happens if they think a black woman from Eastbrook couldn't possibly solve something their professors couldn't?" James felt the weight of her words. He knew she was right to be concerned. Academia could be prejudiced and elitist. But he also knew that brilliance like hers couldn't be ignored forever. "Then we prove them wrong," he said simply. "We show them exactly who Denise Williams is." Denise was quiet for a long time, lost in thought. James could see the conflict playing out across her face, hope warring with fear, dreams battling against practical concerns. Finally, she turned back to him. "If I do this, if I let you tell them about me, will you help me?" Will you make sure I don't get lost in all the attention? I promise, James said, and he meant it more than he had ever meant anything in his life. Okay, Denise said quietly. Tell them. As James left her apartment and drove back to the university, he couldn't stop thinking about the woman he had just met. Denise Williams was about to become the most famous person in mathematics, and her life would never be the same. But something else was happening that James didn't fully understand yet. In the space of one conversation, Denise had become more than just a mathematical mystery to solve. She had become someone he wanted to protect, to champion, to know better. The board meeting was in 1 hour, and James Bennett was about to introduce the world to its newest genius. The university board meeting lasted 3 hours and ended with something James had never seen before, a standing ovation in the State Conference Room of Preston University's administration building. Board members who usually spent meetings discussing budget cuts and enrollment numbers were suddenly talking about international recognition and research grants. This is extraordinary, Professor Bennett, said Dr. Elizabeth Harper, the university president. The Caldwell equation solution will put Preston on the map globally. I want to meet this mystery mathematician immediately. She's agreed to meet with us, James replied carefully. But I want to prepare you, Denise Williams might not be what you're expecting. As long as she can reproduce this work and demonstrate her understanding, I don't care if she's from Mars, Dr. Harper said with a laugh that James didn't find particularly funny. By evening, word had begun to spread through the mathematics department. Graduate students huddled in small groups, whispering about the mysterious solution that had appeared overnight. Professors called colleagues at other universities, sharing photos of the whiteboard and speculating about who could have written it. Denise arrived for her shift at 10 p.m. as usual, pushing her cleaning cart through the same hallways she had walked for 3 years. But tonight felt different. There was an electric energy in the building, a buzz of excitement that seemed to follow her as she moved from room to room. She had spent the afternoon in a state of nervous anticipation, replaying her conversation with Professor Bennett over and over. Had she made the right decision? Was she ready for her quiet life to be turned upside down? As she entered the mathematics department wing, Denise could hear voices coming from the faculty lounge. The professors were working late again, but this time their voices carried excitement instead of frustration. The elegance of the approach is what amazes me, she heard Dr. Mills saying. Whoever solved this has a completely different way of seeing mathematical relationships. I've been thinking about it all day, came Professor Bennett's voice. The solution shows an intuitive understanding that you can't get from textbooks alone. This person has a natural gift. Denise felt a flutter in her stomach. They were talking about her work, praising her approach, and they had no idea she was standing just outside their door. She continued her cleaning routine, working her way closer to classroom 401. The famous equation had been carefully preserved on the whiteboard, with her solution now surrounded by additional notes and verification work that the professors had added throughout the day. Standing in front of the board again, Denise felt a strange mixture of pride and fear. Her handwriting looked so small and modest compared to all the academic work surrounding it. But it was correct, and it was hers. Excuse me. Denise jumped, turning to find Professor Bennett standing in the doorway. He was holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing a gentle smile. I thought you might want some coffee, he said, offering her one of the cups. It's been a long day for both of us. Thank you, Denise said, accepting the warm cup gratefully. How did the meeting go? Better than I could have hoped. The university is very excited to meet you. Maybe too excited. They stood together in comfortable silence for a moment, both looking at the whiteboard. Are you having second thoughts? James asked gently. Every minute, Denise admitted. This morning I was invisible. Tomorrow I might be famous. That's a big change for someone who likes being left alone. Fame in mathematics is different from regular fame, James said with a smile. We're not exactly rock stars. Most people still won't know who you are. But the people who matter will. The people in this building, in this field. They'll expect things from me. They'll expect you to be brilliant. Which you are. Denise sipped her coffee and studied James's face. He seemed genuinely kind, not like someone trying to use her discovery for his own benefit. But she had learned to be cautious about trusting people, especially people from worlds very different from her own. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course. Why do you care so much? You could have just presented my solution and taken credit for discovering it. Why go through all this trouble to make sure I get recognized?" James was quiet for a moment, considering his answer carefully. "Because hiding brilliance is a crime against knowledge itself. Because you deserve better than being invisible. And because..." He paused, seeming to struggle with his words. "Because what?" "Because in one day, you've changed how I think about everything. About mathematics, about potential, about the people we overlook every day. You've made me realize how much talent might be walking through these halls that we never see." Denise felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. Professor Bennett, James, was looking at her like she mattered, like her thoughts and feelings were important. It was a new experience for her. "What happens next?" she asked. "Tomorrow, I'll arrange for you to meet with Dr. Harper, the university president. She'll want to verify your mathematical abilities and discuss opportunities for you here at Preston." "What kind of opportunities?" "Full scholarship for undergraduate studies, with an accelerated path to graduate work. Research assistant positions. Eventually, maybe even teaching opportunities. The university wants to invest in you, Denise." The possibilities seemed overwhelming and wonderful and terrifying all at once. What if I'm not ready? What if I don't belong in formal mathematics programs? Then we'll make sure you get ready. We'll provide tutoring, support, whatever you need. But Denise, I don't think you'll need much help. Your intuitive understanding is already beyond most graduate students I know. As they talked, Denise began to see glimpses of a future she had never dared to imagine. Sitting in lecture halls as a student rather than listening through doors. Working on research projects instead of just reading about them in discarded papers. Maybe even contributing to the field that had been her secret passion for so many years. "There's something else," James said, his voice becoming softer. "I want you to know that throughout all of this, you're not alone. I'll be here to help you navigate everything that's coming." The way he said it made Denise look at him more carefully. There was something in his expression that went beyond professional interest or academic mentorship. Something warmer and more personal. "Why?" she asked simply. James met her eyes directly. "Because I care about what happens to you. Not just as a mathematician, but as a person." The moment stretched between them, full of possibility and unspoken questions. Denise felt her heart beating faster, not from nervousness about tomorrow's meeting, but from the realization that something was developing between her and this kind professor who had changed her life in a single day. "I should finish my cleaning," she said softly, not because she particularly wanted to, but because she needed time to process everything that was happening. "Of course. But Denise? Tomorrow is going to be wonderful. You're going to be wonderful." As James left the classroom, Denise stood alone with her mop and her racing thoughts. In less than 24 hours, she had gone from invisible cleaning lady to recognized genius to someone who might be falling for the professor who had discovered her. Her quiet life was definitely over. But as she looked at her solution still glowing on the whiteboard under the fluorescent lights, Denise realized she was ready for whatever came next. The impossible had already happened. Everything else was just details. The next morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching Denise's nervous energy as she stood outside the imposing doors of the university administration building. She had traded her cleaning uniform for the only professional outfit she owned, a navy blue dress she had bought for job interviews 3 years ago and never had occasion to wear since. James met her at the entrance, looking polished in a charcoal suit but with kind eyes that immediately put her at ease. "Ready for this?" he asked, offering her his arm as they walked toward the elevator. "No," Denise answered honestly. "But I'm here anyway." The elevator ride to the top floor felt eternal. Denise watched the numbers climb and tried to calm her racing heart. In a few minutes, she would be sitting across from the university president, trying to prove that she belonged in a world that had never included people like her. "Remember," James said as they stepped off the elevator, "you've already done the hard part. You solved the equation. Everything else is just conversation." Dar. Elizabeth Harper's office was exactly what Denise had expected: walls lined with diplomas and awards, shelves filled with academic books, and a massive desk that seemed designed to intimidate visitors. The university president herself was a tall woman in her 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they saw. "Ms. Williams," Dr. Harper said, rising from her desk to shake hands. "It's a pleasure to meet the mathematician who has gotten our entire department so excited." "Thank you for seeing me," Denise replied, trying to keep her voice steady. They settled into chairs around a small conference table, with James sitting beside Denise in a gesture of support that didn't go unnoticed by Dr. Harper. "I'll be direct, Ms. Williams," the president began. "Your solution to the Caldwell equation is remarkable. But I need to understand how you developed these skills working as a cleaning contractor." Denise had expected this question and had spent the morning preparing her answer. "I've been studying mathematics on my own since I was young. When I started working here, I had access to textbooks and lectures that helped me learn more advanced concepts." "Self-taught," Dr. Harper nodded. "That's impressive, but it raises questions about gaps in your foundation. Formal mathematical education isn't just about solving problems, it's about understanding proofs, learning proper notation, following academic protocols." "I understand," Denise said quietly, feeling the weight of her incomplete credentials more heavily than ever. "However," Dr. Harper continued, "genius is genius, regardless of how it's acquired. James has suggested that we offer you a full scholarship to complete your undergraduate degree with an accelerated path into our graduate mathematics program." Denise felt her breath catch. A full scholarship? Full tuition, books, and a living stipend. In exchange, you would work as a research assistant and help with some undergraduate tutoring. "But first, I need to be certain of your abilities." Dr. Harper pulled out a folder containing several sheets of paper. "These are graduate-level problems that our current PhD students work on. I'd like you to attempt a few of them." Denise looked at the problems, her eyes scanning the complex equations and theoretical questions. Some dealt with topology, others with abstract algebra and number theory. They were challenging, but as she read through them, patterns began to emerge. "May I have some paper and a pencil?" she asked. For the next hour, Denise worked through problem after problem while Dr. Harper and James watched in silence. Her approach was unconventional, she didn't always follow the standard methods taught in graduate courses, but her solutions were elegant and correct. "Fascinating," Dr. Harper murmured as Denise finished the last problem. "Your methodology is unorthodox, but your understanding is clearly at the doctoral level." "I told you she was exceptional," James said, unable to hide his pride. Dr. Harper leaned back in her chair, studying Denise with new respect. "Ms. Williams, I'm prepared to offer you immediate admission to our undergraduate program with advanced standing. You could potentially complete your bachelor's degree in 2 years and move directly into graduate work." The room seemed to spin around Denise. Everything she had ever dreamed of was being offered to her on a silver platter. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," James urged gently. "There is one concern," Dr. Harper added. "The media attention from your Caldwell equation solution is already beginning. Mathematics journals are calling, and there's interest from news outlets. Are you prepared for that level of scrutiny?" Denise felt her stomach tighten. "What kind of scrutiny?" "Questions about your background, your methods, how you developed these abilities. Some people may be skeptical that someone without formal training could make such a breakthrough." "You mean they'll think I cheated?" Denise said flatly. Some might. That's why it's important that you continue to demonstrate your abilities publicly. Academic conferences, published papers, peer review. You'll need to prove yourself over and over again. James leaned forward. She shouldn't have to prove herself more than anyone else would. In an ideal world, no, Dr. Harper agreed. But Ms. Williams's story is unusual enough that it will attract both supporters and doubters. She needs to be prepared for both. Denise looked between the two professors, feeling the weight of expectation settling on her shoulders. But underneath the nervousness was something stronger, excitement about finally being able to study mathematics openly, to learn from the best minds in the field, to contribute to research that mattered. I want to do it, she said quietly. I want to accept your offer. Dr. Harper smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Excellent. We'll start the paperwork immediately. You can begin classes next semester, which gives us time to design a curriculum that matches your abilities. As they stood to shake hands, Dr. Harper added, there's one more thing. The university would like to host a press conference next week to announce your discovery and your enrollment. It would be good publicity for both you and Preston. Denise's excitement dimmed slightly. A press conference? Just a brief statement and a few questions from reporters. James will be there to support you, and will prepare you for the kinds of questions they might ask. After the meeting, James walked Denise back through the campus, both of them quiet as they processed what had just happened. How do you feel? James asked as they sat on a bench overlooking the quad. Overwhelmed. Excited. Terrified. Happy. All at the same time. Denise looked at the students walking between classes, soon to be her peers rather than the people she cleaned up after. This is really happening, isn't it? It's really happening. James, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Why are you helping me so much? I mean, really. What do you get out of this? James was quiet for a long moment, watching clouds move across the sky. Honestly? At first, it was professional curiosity. You had solved something that fascinated me, and I wanted to understand how. But now? Now what? He turned to look at her directly. Now I care about you. Not just your mathematical abilities, but you as a person. Your dreams, your fears, your future. I want to see you succeed because you deserve success. Something warm bloomed in Denise's chest. That sounds like more than professional interest. It is more than professional interest, James admitted. I hope that's okay. Denise felt a smile tugging at her lips. It's okay. It's more than okay. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the world go by around them. In one morning, Denise's entire life had changed direction. She was going to be a mathematics student at a prestigious university. She was going to have opportunities she had never dared to dream of. And maybe, just maybe, she was going to have something else she had never expected, someone who cared about her for X. Exactly who she was. What happens now? She asked. Now you quit your cleaning job, start preparing for your press conference, and get ready to become the most famous mathematics student in the country. And what about us? What happens with us? James reached over and took her hand gently. That's up to you. But I'd like to find out. As they walked back toward the parking lot, Denise felt like she was floating. The impossible had become possible, and now even more impossible things seemed within reach. Tomorrow, she would start her new life as a mathematics student. But today, she was just a woman holding hands with a man who believed in her, walking through a world full of endless possibilities. The mathematics department was buzzing with activity when Denise arrived the following Monday morning, not as a cleaning lady, but as Preston University's newest and most famous student. Word of her story had spread through academic circles over the weekend, and she could feel eyes following her as she walked through hallways she had once cleaned in solitude. James had arranged to meet her in his office to discuss her class schedule and research opportunities. As she knocked on his door, Denise heard voices inside. James was apparently meeting with someone else. "Come in," James called. Denise opened the door to find James sitting across from Dr. Richard Stone, the head of the mathematics department. Dr. Stone was an older man with gray hair and sharp features who had always looked through her during her cleaning days as if she didn't exist. "Ah, Ms. Williams," Dr. Stone said, standing to shake her hand. "The woman of the hour. Please, sit down." Denise took the empty chair, immediately sensing tension in the room. James looked uncomfortable, and Dr. Stone's smile seemed forced. "I was just discussing your situation with James, Dr. Stone continued. "While we're all impressed with your solution to the Caldwell equation, I have some concerns about moving forward." "What kind of concerns?" Denise asked, though she suspected she already knew. "Well, it's quite unusual for someone without any formal mathematical training to make such a breakthrough. Some of my colleagues at other universities have been asking questions about how exactly you developed these abilities." James leaned forward. "Richard, we've already established that Denise is self-taught. Her abilities are genuine." "Oh, I'm not questioning her abilities," Dr. Stone said quickly. "But you must understand our position. The mathematics community is very traditional. When someone appears out of nowhere claiming to have solved a problem that has stumped experts worldwide, there are bound to be doubts." "I'm not claiming anything," Denise said quietly. "I solved the equation. Professor Bennett has the security footage proving it was me." "Yes, the security footage," Dr. Stone nodded. "Which shows you writing the solution, but doesn't prove you developed it independently. For all we know, someone could have given you the answer to write on the board." The implication hit Denise like a physical blow. "You think I cheated?" "I'm not saying that. I'm saying that's what some people might think. And until we can definitively prove otherwise, it puts the department in a difficult position." James stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous, Richard. We've tested her abilities extensively. She solved graduate-level problems in front of Dr. Harper and me. Problems that she could have prepared for if she knew she was going to be tested," Dr. Stone replied calmly. Denise felt her face burning with anger and humiliation. "What exactly are you suggesting I do to prove myself?" "I think we should postpone your enrollment until after a thorough evaluation by an independent panel of mathematicians. People from outside Preston who have no investment in your success or failure." "Absolutely not," James said firmly. "Denise has already been admitted by the university president herself. We're not going to subject her to some kind of mathematical inquisition." "James, be reasonable. This young woman's background raises legitimate questions. A cleaning lady who suddenly solves the world's most difficult equation. It sounds like something out of a movie." "Her background is exactly why this is so remarkable," James argued. "Denise represents untapped potential that we overlook every day. Instead of celebrating that, you want to tear her down because she doesn't fit your narrow definition of what a mathematician should look like." Dr. Stone's expression hardened. "That's not fair, James. This isn't about her race or her socio-economic background." "Isn't it?" James challenged. "If Denise were a young white man from a privileged family who had solved this equation as a hobby, would you be demanding additional proof?" The room fell silent. Denise looked between the two men, feeling like a prize being fought over rather than a person with her own voice. "Stop," she said quietly. Both men turned to look at her. "Please stop arguing about me like I'm not here." She stood up and walked to the whiteboard in James's office, picking up a marker. "Dr. Stone, you want proof that I understand mathematics? Fine. Give me a problem. Any problem. Make it as hard as you want." Dr. Stone looked surprised. "Ms. Williams, that's not necessary." "Yes, it is." Denise turned to face him directly. You think I'm a fraud. You think someone gave me the answer to the Caldwell equation. So prove it. Give me something I couldn't have prepared for. Dar. Stone exchanged glances with James, then pulled out his phone. Very well. I'm going to call my colleague at MIT and ask him to give us a problem that no one has solved yet. Something from his current research. For the next few minutes, Dr. Stone spoke quietly with his colleague while Denise stood at the whiteboard, marker in hand. James watched her with a mixture of admiration and concern. Are you sure about this? He asked softly. I'm tired of people doubting me, Denise replied. If I'm going to succeed in this field, I need to stop hiding from challenges. Dr. Stone hung up his phone. My colleague has given me a problem from his current research into prime number distribution. It's related to the Riemann hypothesis, one of the most famous unsolved problems in mathematics. He's been working on this specific aspect for 2 years without success. He handed Denise a piece of paper with the problem written out. She read it carefully, her mind already beginning to work through the mathematical relationships involved. How long do I have? She asked. Take as long as you need. But understand, if you can't solve this, it doesn't mean you're not talented. This is doctoral-level research that has stumped experts. Denise nodded and turned to the whiteboard. For the next hour, she worked in concentrated silence while James and Dr. Stone watched. She filled one board, erased it, and started again. Her approach evolved as she worked, each attempt building on insights from the previous one. Finally, she stepped back from the board. I think this works. Dr. Stone approached the whiteboard and began reading through her solution. His expression changed gradually from skepticism to surprise to amazement. This is actually brilliant, he said quietly. You've taken a completely novel approach that none of us considered. He pulled out his phone again and called his MIT colleague back. David, you need to see this. The young woman I told you about just solved your prime distribution problem. No, I'm serious. Her method is unlike anything I've seen before. As Dr. Stone continued his phone conversation, James moved to stand beside Denise at the whiteboard. How do you feel? He asked. Tired, Denise admitted. But good. I proved what I needed to prove. Dar. Stone finished his call and turned back to them with a sheepish expression. Ms. Williams, I owe you an apology. Your abilities are clearly genuine, and my doubts were unfounded. Thank you, Denise said simply. More than that, I'd like to offer you a position as a research assistant in my own lab. What you just did represents a significant breakthrough in number theory. With your permission, I'd like to help you publish this work. Denise looked at James, who nodded encouragingly. I'd like that. As they discussed the details of her research position and publication opportunities, Denise felt a shift in how Dr. Stone was treating her. The dismissive attitude was gone, replaced by genuine respect and professional interest. Later, as she and James walked across campus together, she reflected on what had just happened. That was harder than solving the Caldwell equation, she said. Why? Because the equation was just about mathematics. Today was about proving I deserve to be taken seriously as a person. James stopped walking and turned to face her. You shouldn't have to prove that to anyone. Maybe not. But I'm glad I did. Now I know I can handle whatever else comes my way. They stood together on the campus quad, surrounded by students and professors who were slowly becoming Denise's peers rather than the people she had once served invisibly. What comes next? James asked. Everything, Denise said with a smile that lit up her entire face. Everything I've ever dreamed of. And for the first time since this whole adventure began, she truly believed it was possible. The press conference was scheduled for Thursday morning in the university's main auditorium, and by Wednesday evening, Denise was questioning every decision that had led her to this moment. She sat in James's office, staring at a stack of newspapers and printed articles that his assistant had gathered from mathematics journals and news websites. "Listen to this one," she said, reading from a particularly harsh review. "While we applaud Preston University's commitment to diversity, we must question whether academic standards are being lowered to accommodate feel-good stories. Mathematics is not a field where good intentions can substitute for rigorous training." James looked up from his own pile of articles, his jaw tight with anger. "That's from Professor Whitman at Yale. He's been bitter ever since his own department couldn't solve the Caldwell equation. And this one," Denise continued, "the mathematical community should be cautious about celebrating what appears to be a lucky guess disguised as genius. True mathematical understanding requires years of formal study and peer review." "Stop reading those," James said, reaching over to take the papers from her hands. "You're only torturing yourself." "But they're not wrong about one thing," Denise said quietly. "I don't have the formal background. I don't know all the protocols and traditions. What if I really don't belong here? Denise, look at me." James moved his chair closer to hers. "In the past week, you've solved 2 problems that stumped experts. You've demonstrated mathematical intuition that most people spend decades trying to develop. Your formal background doesn't matter." "It matters to them," she said, gesturing toward the articles. "And tomorrow I have to face reporters who are going to ask me the same questions. How do I explain that I learned calculus from library books? How do I convince them that I'm not just some cleaning lady who got lucky?" James was quiet for a moment, then stood up and walked to his bookshelf. He pulled out a thick biography and handed it to her. "Srinivasa Ramanujan," he said. "One of the greatest mathematicians who ever lived. He grew up in poverty in India, had almost no formal training, and developed most of his mathematical knowledge independently. When he first contacted Cambridge University, many professors dismissed his work as the ramblings of an amateur." Denise opened the book and looked at the photograph of a young Indian man with intelligent eyes and a serious expression. "What happened to him?" "He was eventually recognized as a genius. His work revolutionized number theory and continues to influence mathematics today. But he had to fight for recognition every step of the way, just like you're doing now." "Did he ever doubt himself?" "Constantly. He always felt like an outsider in academic circles. But he never stopped doing mathematics because it was part of who he was." Denise closed the book and held it against her chest. "I'm scared, James." "I know. But you're not alone in this fight. Dr. Harper supports you, Dr. Stone has become your advocate, and you have me. What about us?" Denise asked, voicing the question that had been on her mind for days. "All this attention, all this pressure, what does it mean for whatever is developing between us?" James moved back to sit beside her, taking her hands in his. "It means we have to be careful. It means some people will try to use our relationship to discredit your achievements. They'll say I helped you solve the equations, or that I'm showing favoritism. Maybe we should keep some distance until this all settles down," Denise suggested, though the words felt wrong as soon as she spoke them. "Is that what you want?" "No. But I don't want to give anyone ammunition to use against me. Denise, if we hide our feelings because of what other people might think, we're letting them control our lives. I won't do that, and I won't ask you to do it either." Before she could respond, there was a knock on the office door. James's assistant, Linda, peeked her head in. "Professor Bennett?" "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a group of students outside who want to meet Ms. Williams." "Students?" Denise asked. "From the mathematics and engineering departments. They say they want to show their support before tomorrow's press conference." James and Denise exchanged glances. "Send them in," James said. Over the next few minutes, 15 students filed into the office, a diverse group of undergraduates and graduate students, some carrying flowers and homemade signs. "Ms. Williams," said a young woman with short black hair, "I'm Maria Santos, president of the Mathematics Club. We wanted you to know that not everyone in the academic community has doubts about you. We think what you've accomplished is amazing," added a tall young man with glasses. "You're an inspiration to those of us who don't come from traditional backgrounds." "I'm a first-generation college student," said another young woman. "My parents worked minimum-wage jobs their whole lives. Seeing someone like you succeed gives me hope that I belong here too." One by one, the students shared their stories and expressed their support. Denise felt tears welling up in her eyes as she realized that while some professors questioned her legitimacy, the students saw her as proof that brilliance could come from anywhere. "Thank you," she said when they had finished. "You have no idea how much this means to me." After the students left, Denise sat in James's office feeling stronger than she had all week. "Ready for tomorrow?" James asked. "Getting there," she replied. "But I want to make one thing clear at the press conference." "What's that?" "I'm not going to apologize for who I am or where I come from. I'm not going to pretend that my background doesn't matter. If anything, it makes my achievements more meaningful, not less." James smiled. "That's the attitude that's going to change everything." That evening, Denise went home to her small apartment and spent hours preparing for the press conference. She practiced answering difficult questions, reviewed her mathematical work, and thought about the message she wanted to send. She wasn't just representing herself tomorrow. She was representing every person who had been overlooked, every brilliant mind that had been dismissed because it didn't come with the right credentials, every dreamer who had been told they didn't belong. As she fell asleep that night, Denise thought about Ramanujan, the mathematician who had faced similar challenges a century earlier. He had persevered despite the doubts and prejudices of his time. Tomorrow, she would do the same. The mathematical world was about to learn that genius doesn't care about background, credentials, or expectations. It simply is, waiting to be recognized and celebrated wherever it appears. And Denise Williams was ready to prove it. The auditorium was packed beyond capacity, with reporters, professors, students, and curious onlookers filling every seat and lining the walls. Denise stood backstage, listening to the murmur of the crowd and trying to calm her racing heart. She wore a simple black dress that James had helped her pick out, and her hair was pulled back in a professional style that still felt like herself. "5 minutes," Dr. Harper said, appearing beside her with an encouraging smile. "How are you feeling?" "Like I might throw up," Denise admitted. "That's normal. Just remember, you've already done the hard part. Today is just about sharing your story." James appeared on her other side, looking handsome in a navy suit but with concern evident in his eyes. "You don't have to prove anything to these people, Denise. Just be yourself. Easy for you to say. You've never been questioned about whether you deserve to breathe the same air as other mathematicians." "You're right, I haven't. But I've watched you work, and I know what you're capable of. Trust in that." Dr. Harper stepped up to the podium as the crowd settled into expectant silence. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. 3 weeks ago, a problem that had puzzled the world's best mathematicians for months was solved right here at Preston University. Today, I'm pleased to introduce you to the remarkable young woman who made that breakthrough possible, Ms. Denise Williams." The applause was polite but cautious as Denise walked to the podium. She looked out at the sea of faces, some curious, some skeptical, some openly hostile. In the front row, she spotted several professors from other universities who had been vocal critics of her story. "Thank you," she began, her voice stronger than she felt. "I know many of you have questions about who I am and how I was able to solve the Caldwell equation. I'm here to answer those questions honestly." A reporter in the second row immediately raised his hand. "Ms. Williams, can you explain how someone with no formal mathematical training was able to solve a problem that stumped professors at Harvard and MIT? I may not have formal training, but I've been studying mathematics independently for over 15 years. I've read textbooks, followed research papers, and solved problems because I love the subject. Intelligence doesn't require a diploma." But surely you understand why people might be skeptical, pressed another reporter. Your story is quite unusual. Unusual doesn't mean impossible, Denise replied. History is full of mathematicians who made breakthroughs despite unconventional backgrounds. Ramanujan, Hardy, even Einstein faced skepticism from the academic establishment. Professor Whitman from Yale stood up in the audience. Ms. Williams, with all due respect, comparing yourself to Einstein seems rather presumptuous. Can you provide any evidence that your mathematical understanding goes beyond solving a single equation? Denise felt her temper flare, but she kept her voice calm. Professor Whitman, I solved your colleague Dr. Stone's research problem last week. I've also completed graduate-level coursework evaluations. But more importantly, I'm here to do mathematics, not to convince people who have already made up their minds. That sounds like deflection, Professor Whitman continued. If your abilities are genuine, surely you can demonstrate them publicly. James started to stand, but Denise motioned for him to stay seated. She walked over to the large whiteboard that had been set up beside the podium. Fine, she said, picking up a marker. Give me a problem. Right now. In front of everyone. The auditorium buzzed with excitement. Professor Whitman looked surprised but pleased. Very well. I'll give you a problem from my current research in algebraic geometry. It involves finding the intersection points of two complex curves. He approached the board and wrote out a complex equation system that made several people in the audience shift uncomfortably in their seats. Graduate students pulled out notebooks to follow along. Denise studied the problem for a moment, then began working. She didn't speak as she wrote, letting her mathematical reasoning speak for itself. The room was completely silent except for the sound of marker on whiteboard. 20 minutes later, she stepped back from the board. The intersection points are here, she said, pointing to her final answer. The system has exactly 4 solutions, which you can verify using the discriminate method. Professor Whitman approached the board and began checking her work. His expression gradually changed from skepticism to surprise to something approaching awe. This is correct, he said quietly. And your method is more elegant than the approach my team has been using. The auditorium erupted in applause, but Denise wasn't finished. She turned back to the crowd. I want to say something to everyone here, especially the students who might be watching. I spent 3 years cleaning these buildings, invisible to the people whose respect I desperately wanted. I listened to lectures through closed doors and solved homework problems from the trash because I was afraid to believe I deserved better. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. But talent doesn't care about your background. Intelligence doesn't check your bank account or your family history. And if you have something to contribute to mathematics, or any field, don't let anyone convince you that you don't belong. She looked directly at Professor Whitman. Yes, my story is unusual. Yes, I learned mathematics in unconventional ways. But that doesn't make my contributions less valid. It makes them more important, because they represent all the brilliant minds we overlook when we only look for genius in traditional places. The standing ovation that followed was not polite or cautious. It was thunderous and sustained, with students jumping to their feet and professors nodding in appreciation. Even Professor Whitman was clapping, though he looked somewhat embarrassed. As the applause died down, a young reporter raised her hand. Ms. Williams, what's next for you? What are your goals now that you've been accepted into Preston's mathematics program? I want to do good work, Denise said simply. I want to contribute to research that matters. And I want to make sure that other people like me know that the door is open for them too. Is it true that you're in a romantic relationship with Professor Bennett? Called out another reporter. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Denise felt every eye in the room turn to her, waiting to see how she would handle this personal intrusion. Professor Bennett believed in my abilities when no one else did, she said carefully. He fought for my opportunities and supported my dreams. Whether that relationship becomes something more is between us. She looked directly at James, who was smiling at her with unmistakable pride and affection. "But I will say this, I won't apologize for caring about someone who saw my worth when I was invisible to everyone else." The press conference concluded with more questions about her research plans and academic goals. As the crowd began to disperse, Denise felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. She had faced her critics directly and proven herself on their own terms. James approached the podium as the last reporters filed out. "How do you feel?" "Like I can handle anything now," Denise said, smiling. "Bring on graduate school. Bring on research projects. Bring on whatever comes next. What about us? Are you ready for whatever comes next there too?" Denise looked at this man who had changed her life, who had seen her potential when she was just a cleaning lady with big dreams. "I'm ready for everything, James. All of it." As they walked out of the auditorium together, Denise Williams was no longer the invisible woman who cleaned buildings at night. She was a mathematician, a researcher, a student, and someone who had proven that genius could come from anywhere. The academic world was about to learn what James had known from the beginning, that sometimes the most brilliant minds are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to look. 6 months later, Denise sat in the front row of advanced number theory, taking notes as Professor Chen explained the intricacies of elliptic curves. Around her, graduate students twice her age struggled to keep up with concepts that came naturally to her. She had completed her undergraduate requirements in record time and was now officially a graduate student at Preston University. The transformation had been remarkable. Gone was the uncertain woman who had cleaned these very classrooms. In her place sat a confident scholar who contributed meaningfully to every class discussion and had already co-authored 2 research papers with Dr. Stone. After class, as students filed out discussing homework assignments, Maria Santos approached Denise's desk. "Hey, Denise. A group of us are going to study for the qualifying exams together tonight. Want to join us?" "Thanks, but I already have plans," Denise replied, packing her notebooks into a leather bag that James had given her for her birthday. "Hot date with Professor Bennett?" Maria asked with a knowing smile. Denise laughed. "Actually, yes. We're going to look at apartments together." The relationship between Denise and James had developed slowly and carefully over the past months. They had waited until she was officially enrolled as a graduate student before making their relationship public, wanting to avoid any appearance of impropriety. Now, with Denise established as a legitimate researcher in her own right, they were ready to take the next step. "That's so romantic," Maria sighed. "The brilliant professor and his genius girlfriend. It's like something out of a movie." "It's better than a movie," Denise said. "It's real." She walked across campus to James's office, enjoying the crisp autumn air and the changing leaves. Students called out greetings as she passed. She had become something of a celebrity on campus, though she tried to stay grounded and approachable. James was waiting for her with a stack of apartment listings and a smile that still made her heart skip a beat. "Ready to find our new home?" he asked, standing to kiss her hello. "Our home," Denise repeated, loving the sound of it. "I still can't believe this is real sometimes." They drove through the city looking at various apartments and houses, discussing the practical aspects of moving in together while both of them worked on the same campus. They had been careful to maintain professional boundaries in their academic work, but living together would require even more discretion. The third apartment they visited was perfect, a spacious 2-bedroom place with large windows, built-in bookshelves, and enough room for both of their home offices. As they stood in the empty living room, imagining their future there, James pulled Denise into his arms. "I have something to tell you," he said, his voice unusually serious. "What is it?" "I got a call from MIT yesterday. They want to offer you a full fellowship for their doctoral program. Full funding, research opportunities, access to some of the best mathematicians in the world." Denise felt her stomach drop. "MIT wants me?" "They want you very much. It's an incredible opportunity, Denise. The kind of chance most mathematicians dream about their entire careers. But what about us? What about Preston? I'm finally settled here. James was quiet for a moment, looking out the window at the city below. I think you should seriously consider it. Are you trying to get rid of me? Denise asked, attempting to keep her tone light despite the fear growing in her chest. Never. But I love you too much to let you pass up an opportunity like this because of me. And what would you do? Would you come with me? I don't know. My life is here, my research, my tenure-track position. But Denise, this isn't about me. This is about your future, your career, your potential. They spent the evening walking through the city, talking about possibilities and fears. The MIT offer represented everything Denise had never dared to dream of: recognition from the most prestigious mathematics program in the country, resources beyond anything Preston could offer, and the chance to work with legendary figures in her field. But it also meant leaving behind everything she had built at Preston. Her relationship with James, her friendships with students like Maria, the comfortable life she was finally creating for herself. What does your heart tell you? James asked as they sat on a bench overlooking the river. My heart tells me that a year ago I was cleaning toilets, and now MIT wants me as a doctoral student. My heart tells me that's impossible and wonderful and terrifying all at the same time. And what does it tell you about us? Denise turned to face him fully. It tells me that I love you. That you changed my life in ways that have nothing to do with mathematics. That losing you would be like losing part of myself. But I also know that if I don't take this opportunity, I might regret it for the rest of my life. And eventually, I might resent you for being the reason I stayed. James nodded slowly. I've been thinking the same thing. They sat in silence, watching boats move slowly down the river. Finally, James spoke again. What if I applied for a visiting researcher position at MIT? It's a long shot, but I could try to arrange something for next year. You would do that? Leave your position here? For you? I'd do anything. Denise felt tears welling up in her eyes. James, I need some time to think about this. It's a huge decision. Of course. Take all the time you need. That night, Denise lay awake in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling and weighing her options. On her nightstand sat the MIT offer letter, thick with possibilities and promises. Across town, James was probably lying awake too, thinking about the same impossible choice. The next morning, Denise found herself walking through the mathematics building where everything had started. She stopped outside classroom 401, now empty except for the morning light streaming through the windows. The whiteboard had been erased countless times since that night she had solved the Caldwell equation, but she could still picture her small solution written in the corner. Second thoughts. Denise turned to find Dr. Stone approaching with his usual morning coffee. Something like that, she replied. Dr. Stone, can I ask you something? Of course. When you were my age, did you ever have to choose between love and career? Dr. Stone smiled knowingly. Ah, the MIT offer. James told me about it yesterday. He's quite torn up about the whole thing. What would you do if you were me? That's not a fair question, Denise. When I was your age, I didn't have your talent or your opportunities. But I can tell you this, regret is a heavy burden to carry. Regret about which choice, though? That's what I can't figure out. Maybe the real question isn't whether to choose love or career, but whether you can find a way to have both. Dar. Stone's words stayed with Denise throughout the day as she attended classes and worked on research. That evening, she made a decision that surprised even herself. She called MIT and asked for a meeting with the department head. 2 days later, Denise sat in a conference room at MIT across from Dr. Angela Rodriguez, one of the most respected mathematicians in the country. Dr. Rodriguez was a petite woman with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. MS. Williams, I have to say, your request for this meeting was quite unusual. Most students would simply accept or decline our offer. I'm not most students, Denise replied with a confidence that would have shocked her former self. No, you certainly aren't. Your work on the Caldwell equation and your subsequent research have been remarkable. That's why we want you here at MIT. Dr. Rodriguez, I'm honored by your offer. Truly. But I have a proposition for you. I'm listening. What if I could bring additional value to your program? What if accepting me meant also getting access to another brilliant researcher? Dr. Rodriguez leaned back in her chair, intrigued. Go on. Professor James Bennett at Preston University. He's done groundbreaking work in computational mathematics and has been my mentor and research partner. If MIT were to offer him a visiting researcher position, you would get both of us. You're negotiating as a package deal. I'm suggesting that sometimes the best mathematical breakthroughs come from collaboration. James and I work well together. Our research approaches complement each other. Separately, we're both good mathematicians. Together, we could be exceptional. Dr. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment, studying Denise with new interest. You realize you're in a position to make demands like this? Your reputation alone would be enough to secure your admission here. I'm not making demands. I'm proposing a solution that benefits everyone involved. And if we can't accommodate Professor Bennett? Then I respectfully decline your offer and continue my work at Preston. Dr. Rodriguez smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Ms. Williams, you have more nerve than most tenured professors I know. I like that. Is that a yes? It's a maybe. Let me make some calls and see what we can arrange. A week later, Denise sat in James's office as he read through a letter that had arrived that morning. I can't believe you did this, he said, looking up at her with amazement. Did it work? MIT is offering me a 2-year visiting researcher position with the possibility of a permanent appointment based on performance. How did you convince them? I told them the truth, that we're better together than apart. James stood up and moved around his desk to pull Denise into his arms. You realize you just turned down one of the most prestigious programs in the country to negotiate for something that might not have worked. I had faith it would work. What if it hadn't? Then we would have found another way. James, I didn't fight this hard to become a mathematician just to give up the best part of my life in the process. They kissed in the afternoon light streaming through his office window, and Denise felt the last piece of her new life clicking into place. She was going to MIT as a doctoral student. James would be coming with her as a visiting researcher. They would continue their work together while building a life together. So we're really doing this? James asked. Moving to Boston. Starting over together. We're doing this. Though I have one condition. Name it. The first apartment we look at in Boston better have better bookshelves than this place. James laughed, spinning her around in his arms. I love you, Denise Williams. I love your brilliance, your courage, and your completely unreasonable negotiating skills. I love you too, James Bennett. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for letting me be part of your incredible story. As they stood together in the office where their relationship had begun, Denise thought about how much had changed in less than a year. She had gone from cleaning buildings to negotiating with MIT. She had gone from being invisible to being recognized as one of the most promising young mathematicians in the country. But most importantly, she had learned that she didn't have to choose between her dreams and her heart. Sometimes, with enough courage and creativity, she could have both. The future stretched ahead of them, full of research possibilities, academic adventures, and the promise of building a life together that honored both their professional aspirations and their personal happiness. Mathematics had brought them together, but love would carry them forward into whatever came next. 1 year later, Denise stood at the front of a lecture hall at MIT, looking out at a classroom full of undergraduate students taking introduction to number theory. It was her first time teaching as the primary instructor, and she felt the familiar flutter of nerves that still accompanied new challenges. Today we're going to talk about prime numbers, she began, her voice clear and confident. Who can tell me what makes a number prime? Several hands shot up around the room. As she called on students and guided them through the discussion, Denise marveled at how natural teaching felt. A year ago, she had been sitting in classrooms as a student. Now she was sharing her knowledge with the next generation of mathematicians. Her doctoral work at MIT had exceeded everyone's expectations, including her own. The research she had begun at Preston with Dr. Stone had evolved into a dissertation that was already generating excitement in the mathematical community. She had presented papers at international conferences, published in prestigious journals, and earned the respect of colleagues who had once doubted her abilities. But perhaps more importantly, she had found her voice as an advocate for students from non-traditional backgrounds. She regularly spoke at high schools and underserved communities, encouraging young people to pursue mathematics regardless of their circumstances. The Denise Williams Foundation, which she had established with the prize money from solving the Caldwell equation, provided scholarships and mentoring for first-generation college students interested in STEM fields. After class, Denise walked across campus to the coffee shop where she was meeting James for lunch. The Boston autumn was crisp and beautiful, with leaves turning brilliant shades of orange and red. Students hurried past carrying backpacks and conversation, and Denise felt grateful to be part of this vibrant academic community. She found James already seated at their usual table, grading papers and looking handsome in the casual professor style that always made her smile. His visiting researcher position had been so successful that MIT had offered him a permanent faculty position, which he had accepted eagerly. "How was class?" he asked, looking up as she approached. "Good. I think I'm finally getting the hang of this teaching thing." Denise slid into the seat across from him and stole a sip of his coffee. "How's your paper coming along?" "Almost finished." "Dar. Rodriguez thinks it might be ready for submission to the Journal of Computational Mathematics next month." They chatted about their respective work as they shared a sandwich, falling into the comfortable rhythm of two people who had learned to balance their professional and personal lives successfully. The challenges of the past year, adjusting to new academic pressures, building reputations at a prestigious institution, and maintaining their relationship under the scrutiny of the mathematics community, had only strengthened their partnership. "I have something to tell you," James said as they finished eating. "Good something or bad something?" "Definitely good something. I got a call from Dr. Harper at Preston this morning. They want to name the new mathematics building after you." Denise nearly choked on her coffee. "They want to what?" "The Denise Williams Mathematics Center. Construction starts next summer." That's incredible. But also terrifying. Having a building named after you feels very permanent. You've earned it. Your story has inspired hundreds of students to pursue mathematics. The publicity from your discovery and your advocacy work has brought millions of dollars in donations to mathematics programs across the country. Denise shook her head in amazement. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life." "Believe it. You changed everything, Denise. Not just for yourself, but for everyone who comes after you." As they walked back across campus, James suddenly stopped in front of a small garden tucked between two academic buildings. "There's something else," he said, his voice different now, nervous and excited at the same time. "James, you're making me worried." Instead of answering, he dropped to one knee and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Denise's heart stopped as she realized what was happening. "Denise Williams," he said, opening the box to reveal a beautiful solitaire diamond ring, "you solved the impossible equation that brought us together. You've solved every challenge that's come your way since then. Now I have one more problem for you to solve." "James," she whispered, tears already forming in her eyes. "The problem is this: how can we make sure that we spend the rest of our lives working on mathematics together, building a family together, and solving whatever impossible equations life throws at us together?" Is this your way of proposing to me with a math problem? It's my way of asking if you'll marry me and let me be your research partner for life. Denise looked down at this wonderful man who had seen her potential when she was invisible, who had fought for her opportunities, who had rearranged his entire life to support her dreams. The ring sparkled in the autumn sunlight, and students passing by had begun to stop and watch the scene unfolding. The answer is yes, she said, laughing through her tears. Yes, yes, yes. James slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her as the gathered students burst into applause. Someone started chanting, "Dr. Williams. Dr. Williams," and soon the entire crowd had joined in. As they stood together surrounded by cheering students and falling leaves, Denise thought about the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. 2 years ago, she had been a cleaning lady with secret dreams. Now she was Dr. Denise Williams, mathematician, teacher, advocate, and soon-to-be wife to the man who had helped make it all possible. "So what's next for us?" she asked as the crowd began to disperse. "Everything," James replied, echoing the words she had spoken after her first press conference. "Research projects, teaching adventures, maybe some little mathematicians of our own someday." Little mathematicians? Why not? They'll have the best genetics for it. Denise laughed, feeling happiness bubble up from somewhere deep inside her chest. "I love you, James Bennett. I love you too, soon-to-be Dr. Denise Williams Bennett." That evening, they called their friends and family to share the news. Dr. Harper at Preston was delighted and immediately offered to host their wedding reception in the new mathematics building. Dr. Stone sent a congratulatory email filled with equations that spelled out, "Congratulations," when solved correctly. Even Professor Whitman from Yale, who had been one of her harshest early critics, sent a warm note acknowledging her contributions to the field and wishing them happiness. As they sat in their Boston apartment that night, surrounded by mathematical journals and wedding planning magazines, Denise reflected on the equation that had started everything. The Caldwell equation had been unsolvable until she approached it with fresh eyes and an unconventional perspective. Maybe that was the real lesson of her story. Sometimes the most impossible problems have the simplest solutions. Sometimes the greatest discoveries come from the most unexpected places. And sometimes, love and success aren't competing equations to be solved separately, but complementary variables in a larger formula for happiness. The genius cleaning lady had become Dr. Denise Williams, but more importantly, she had become exactly who she was always meant to be. The impossible had become inevitable, and the future stretched ahead of them like an unsolved equation waiting for their combined brilliance to unlock its secrets. In mathematics and in love, Denise had learned that the most beautiful solutions are often the ones that seemed impossible until someone brave enough to try made them real. The world was full of impossible equations waiting to be solved, and Denise Williams Bennett was ready for all of them.